Day 23. And so this morning, it was a beautiful fall day. It kind of felt like a movie set for a moment. The wide boulevard, the people on the sidewalks, the trees that almost touch each other on either side of the road, and the leaves that are slowly changing color. And I just really enjoyed being in that moment. And the word that sort of popped into my head was unapologetic. At that moment, I felt very unapologetic for all of the choices that I've made to get me here. And I think while it doesn't seem that complicated in some ways, I also realize how challenging it can be to make those decisions and how much we can really like where we are in a sense, or at least be comfortable, even if it's not serving us, even if it is not helping us grow and giving us a meaningful life. I think as a society, we very much prize status and roles and wealth, and that can make it really hard to leave those executive roles. There is a sense that the only way to go is up, that we all need to be climbing the corporate ladder, that we are in competition with each other, and the more we give of ourselves, the more likely we are to get promoted. And I think I'm going to kind of call out the workaholism here and know and compare it a little bit to alcoholism or people that use substance or food or video games or pornography. And that's usually done to not deal with feelings, to either numb them out or forget about them, or sometimes to create a distraction so that we don't have to deal with them. And I do think that workaholism can be in that category. I think um, it is worth asking to some individuals in some of those roles what they're avoiding, because it's very clear they're avoiding something. It may be that they don't want to go home because either home is lonely, even though they may be in a relationship, or they may be single. And it may be an avoidance of conflict or difficult conversations or vulnerable conversations. It can be fighting off doubts or concerns about self-worth or anxiety about whether they've made the right choices in their life. And I think there really is a sense of keeping ourselves busy and staying focused on our calendars and kind of always making that the priority, even if your organization isn't fully expecting that to be the priority. It becomes a place to hide. It becomes a place to avoid. And I think organizations can have some very unhealthy aspects to them. I think um, there are unfortunately plenty of senior leaders who are still trying to get their self-worth out of their positions, who are still trying to prove something to someone, whether that's themselves, whether that's a previous version of themselves, whether that's parental expectations, whether that is overcoming circumstances of poverty or simply elements of shame that exist within them that feel too ugly to face, that feel too scary and overwhelming. And so if you have the position and the title and the role, you must be legitimate and worthy and free of shame. It becomes such a shame shield. I absolutely experienced some of that myself. And equally, I also learned over time that that shame would show up in criticism. Anytime a colleague would criticize me or make a dig in, a somewhat passive aggressive dig in a meeting or something like that. And my shame shields would go up. I would get very defensive. I would kind of really just react to anything that might have made me look less than competent, less than like I had it together. There was elements of perfectionism to it, absolutely. And I think that was all also tied to, I don't know how secure we ever feel in any of these roles. I think we get them, we run fast with them. Somebody once said, you get them and you skate and skate and skate, and that is kind of how it works. You are always drinking from the fire hose, although it gets a little bit easier over time. And I just think there's a different approach that we could take, and I don't know that I'm going to fix the corporate world out there, but I also want to say you're not bound to it, and it can feel like a significant change to leave those roles, absolutely, because this is not simply making a decision to work somewhere or not work somewhere. It's not making a decision around um, a guaranteed salary versus a possible salary. Those are all factors as part of the decision. Those all have to be considered in part of the decision. But experience has taught me that what holds people back in change is not the math, is not the logistics, is not um, worries or concerns about their business plan or whether they have the right idea moving forward. I think it's all the pieces that we don't always realize how much of ourselves is invested in an organization, how much of our identity we get out of an organization, how much self-esteem and sense of worth and confidence and legitimacy and social status and approval of others. And I think when people actually have to face that they may not have all of those things to lean on, I think that usually becomes kind of that speed bump or kind of that wall in being afraid to leave. I think if you leave the organization, you're forcing yourself to be you in a sense. And also, having worked with enough people, it is fascinating that we can feel quite confident as an employee, quite confident in our role. But the moment we leave that role, the moment we become a consultant, become a coach, become a self-employed individual, and I think even more so for those who choose to brand themselves or use their name as their company name, which often is the case, there is a real vulnerability in that. I think we can't hide behind the corporation anymore. We can't simply consider ourselves vehicles or actors of a particular company. We now own all parts of ourselves, and I think that fear of failure is extremely high. I think we spend a whole lot of time worrying about what other people may think, even though we may not fully feel that. Totally get that. I understand that in senior leadership roles, we're often making unpopular decisions, and we can stand behind those and we can easily sit with those. But I think it gets a whole lot trickier when it becomes I've decided to leave an organization and start my own company, because all of those shadow doubts and all of the possible stories we think people might make up about us start to arise within us. Is it because he burnt out? Is it because he couldn't hack it? Is it because he was never going to make his way to the top? Is it because he couldn't hack it? There's a sense of tapping out, and I think there is an undercurrent of belief that leaving those roles because they are considered so prestigious is never done by choice. Even if we can't see it, there's usually always an undercurrent around, were they pushed out? Did they leave, or were they pushed out? Or could they just not handle it? Or were they not rising their way to the top? Because again, there is that narrative that seems to exist and the myth that seems to exist. We enter into organizations and the only way to go is up. And so I think that is why I felt quite unapologetic this morning. I felt unapologetic in my life, and it's not every day that I get to kind of feel that solid in it, but I stood behind every decision that I had made. I could care less what other people what other people may have thought about any decision that I had met. And I was having a really fantastic moment. It is the reward for being willing to sit with all of those doubts, to be able to work through them all, to move forward regardless of what stories people may make up about me, what rumors may have existed about me, what perceptions may have existed out there. And I also think we forget a couple of things. I think one, we forget how fast we fade out of memory within an organization. I don't know if you've ever had the situation where you might return to an organization you were with, say a year later or something, and half the people are new. Half the people actually have no idea who you are. And organizations are very much shifting, changing beings. And those we don't interact with regularly on a daily basis or even weekly basis very quickly fade from our memory. And so um, we will not be the focus of other people's thoughts as much as we nearly think that we are. And I think we forget how much other people are obsessed with themselves, their own doubts, their own worries. Well, you are contemplating and worrying about whether it's the right decision to leave a relationship or leave an organization or make a change in your life. Somebody else is caught up in their own narrative of unworthiness, of maybe struggling with debt or a substance problem or um, an ill relative or all sorts of things that consume their time and consume their focus. And I think it is a hard truth sometimes for us to realize that we are all extras in each other's lives, and um, those that care about us will be the ones that follow us, but those that care about us are usually the ones that support our decisions as well, and want to root for us, they understand that we need it differently. They know us well enough to know that we're not fulfilled, and they want to see us enjoy that fulfillment. And I think that's absolutely been true for me. A year and say 14 months out of my corporate role, those that I'm still in touch with are those that I wanted to be in touch with, those who I have a real relationship, a supportive relationship, who understood the whole way along and have continued to be supportive and are excited and celebrate my successes with me more so than want to see me fall. And I think that's the other piece that we have to absolutely remember is those who would push us down, those that would get pleasure from our stumbles or falls or failures are usually the ones with profound insecurity themselves who just want an outlet to not feel so bad about themselves. And so I think it really is somewhat of a mountain of psychological barriers that really all have to be looked at, have to be thought through, have to be worked through. It's not exactly a to-do list, but I think they are par for the course. And I think unless we're expecting them and unless we have some space to work through them and push back on them and challenge those inner voices, because often they're intertwined with our inner critic as well. I think unless we're given that opportunity, it can look so scary on the outside. It can feel like, you know, moving from a place where you're surrounded by people who almost form a wall around you to being out in the cold and the elements on your own. And it doesn't have to be. I think there is a process of self-grounding that may need to happen, and it is an important and extremely valuable process. And getting help with that, if you need help with that, can be a really important catalyst in terms of being able to move forward with change, in terms of being able to choose self and make the decisions that are right for self over the decisions that aren't going to rock the boat, because sometimes we do have to rock the boat, and that's okay. I think it is actually those who choose to rock the boat that tend to realize the bigger successes in the long run. But unless you're willing to sit with that discomfort, you're not going to be able to realize those successes. So I own it. I was unapologetic and enjoying that moment, unapologetic of soaking it all in, of having just a really wonderful small Parisian moment that didn't need to involve large events. I didn't need a ticket to it. And I could carry on. I could feel that groundedness, that confidence, that solid foundation within me. And that is what I wish for you. I want you to wrestle with these demons if they are present for you. I want you to challenge those voices that say, stay small because you don't want to upset anyone, or that your value is exclusively within this organization. And if you leave the organization or the relationship or whatever it is, you will regret it. You will be on your own. You will fail. That's simply your self-critic trying to keep you safe, but unfortunately not necessarily doing the best job of it. So start finding more and more of your unapologetic moments. Start finding those spaces that you want to claim. And I think this becomes some of that differentiator between a passive dream and a direction and a path that you start moving towards. It is your choice. You ultimately have to start making those choices. But just expect what's going to come at you and how you're going to come through those and over those and challenge those and not accept them as truths, because they're not truths. They are inner saboteur moments more than anything else, and they absolutely can be overcome. So thank you as always for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you in the next video.